Daybreak with your host, Rich Ryder.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, 1370 AM WBTN, and welcome to the Green Mountain State here. My name is Rich Ryder, and I am delighted to have in the studio with us here today the naturalist in residence at the Mount Anthony Union Middle School, also the Trust for Wildlife, Marshal Case. And along with Marshall today is Sam Orr, who is a videographer. So welcome here today to WBTN. Good morning, Marshall.
Good morning, Rich.
Even though this is radio, and we do this radio show, ladies and gentlemen, I really feel sorry for you out there because Marshall always comes with great props. Okay, now today I'm looking at 3 different bags of coffee, and some of these coffees have beautiful pictures of birds on them, so I'm assuming somehow, Marshall, that we're relating this coffee to the environment and birds. Am I correct?
Absolutely correct.
All right. Well, tell us all about it.
One of the dreams 10 or more years ago that we talked about was to get people focused on shade-grown coffee because the open-grown methods destroy a lot of the rainforest in particular in Central and South America where they have the coffee plantations.
Well, let me just stop you there for a minute because coffee has been around for a long, long time.
That's right.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Is it because the population has increased so much that they're clearing this land to keep up with the demand of coffee? Because coffee has been grown for years and years and years. And are they actually clearing a lot of these forests, etc., because our demand is greater?
It's because you can make more. This is not going to be a surprise to you.
More money.
More money faster.
Yeah, right.
And the challenge is that when you strip an area, you cut a rainforest, whatever the size is,
mm-hmm.
and then you treat it with harsh, things that will speed up the
growth process, right?
Yeah, the process and also the yield.
Mm-hmm.
Then you walk away from it when you reach the point where you think now you can make more money by stripping another area, and you walk away from the one that
mm-hmm.
that you were dealing with. It's a simple way to put it, but that's basically what they're doing.
Okay.
And the process, the workers who are almost all, if not all, from the regional areas where they're growing the coffee, they're poor people for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're subjected to the chemicals and to all of the things that go on with the plantation. So it's a health problem too for a lot of these folks. And of course, it's terrible use of the land. And when we get to the bird part, birds that we have up here, there are many species that wind up going all the way to. In this case, we're focused on Colombia, by the way, the country of Colombia. We're starting the program,
mm-hmm.
and these birds need habitat on both ends of the spectrum. They breed up here, and from Appalachia, heavily the neotropical migrants, right on up here into our area and further north. But then when they go back to their home base,
mm-hmm.
which is south of here, they need to have that land there as well. Otherwise,
right.
they lose their wintering grounds.
Mm-hmm.
So what the whole idea here and what Sam is working on is to help produce a film. It'll be the first one we're going to attempt is about 8 to 10 minute film.
Okay.
And we want to tell the story through a lot of wildlife and things like that would appeal to people, because we don't want to overwhelm them with a big surge of a program that's going to be mm-hmm. too complicated to understand. So we're doing it by every cup of coffee counts. And we want to shift people from going to shade-grown coffee, which displaces very few species of birds, and they don't really alter the forest very much. So they tuck the trees in, and it grows. It's actually more robust flavor as well. You get a better quality coffee. And get them to go to the marketplace in the business places and ask for shade-grown coffee.
Okay.
And so it's not really going to cost people, maybe it's a dime more or something, I don't know. The differences have narrowed down
mm-hmm.
So that the coffee, the value in terms of the cost to the customer is pretty close.
Okay, but now let's talk about that unfortunately it all comes back to money,
mm-hmm.
okay? So if people are clearing land and they're putting in a coffee plantation, and they're doing things like this to speed it up. How long does it take shade-grown organic coffee to grow and mature? Is it like twice as long?
No, I don't think the process is that different. That's a good question. I don't know the answer in terms of years, but it's not that different.
It's not much different.
No.
Okay. Because then this is a trend that should be more widely accepted throughout the world. I mean, the world drinks coffee.
That's one of the most traded commodities in the world. And of course, here in this country, the average American drinks something like 3.5 cups of coffee a day. And that includes people like Sam, who does not drink coffee, and I don't drink much myself.
Well, you'll be proud to know that I've cut my consumption down to just 2 cups a day, so I'm below that national average.
Ah, okay.
Okay, and decaf at that.
Well, so that's what we're trying to do. We want to make it easy for people to help make the change.
Right.
And that's going to be the whole point of the film, because if we can't project this in a way that it makes it easy, then we won't be able to shift as many people, and we won't be able to get at saving more of the rainforest, in particular, from being cut. We're also working with the coal companies to reforest up to 1.3 million acres of coal strip mine land in Appalachia, and that has been already walked away from because they've met the commitment from the current federal standards, which are really not very good. We're trying to shift that by doing different science, as you know, with the American chestnut I've been working with.
Exactly.
So that's kind of the big picture, but we want to keep this simple. We want to have a lot of get people to take it into their heart and realize that by just simply changing over to a shade-grown coffee, which means we then have to get more product on the shelf and work with companies to help do that.
Sure.
That they will make the change, and it will be a success story for a lot of people working together without having to go take their time to do something about it other than what they drink with their coffee.
Let's say that this shade-grown coffee movement really catches on. What is to prevent the entrepreneur of taking an open field and throwing a huge net over it or something and saying, "Oh, this is shade-grown coffee"? So
where's the quality control?
Exactly.
Well, that's so that comes down to the companies and the roasters, and they were very quick to say yes, and they're very socially responsible. They've been at this for a long time, and they're doing an excellent job. And the other thing is to get Rotary involved, because Rotarians own a lot of businesses,
right?
Or they're in charge of a lot of businesses.
And I want to make sure that the people understand, the public understands too, that coffee can only be grown in certain areas. It doesn't, it's not like you can grow coffee in Minnesota or Vermont. It does need a certain climate. It does need certain soils. It does need amounts of water, etc. And I mean, the only coffee grown in the United States is Kona in Hawaii, for instance. So they have the right climate, etc. It's more of a tropical climate. And I just want to make sure that people that are aware of that too. So we are talking about a lot of foreign countries.
Well, and as part of since Columbia is going to be our starting point, because we have several associations there, and we're working with ProAves, which is a conservation group that works in that area. They're very good. They also have an office up here in the United States, so you'll be hosted by them to a large degree.
Oh, actually, where we're going to an eco lodge that's in a cerulean warbler, a neotropical migrant bird reserve that ProAves, the Colombian conservation group, actually has owned and created, so it's their property. And they also have an arm of their organization that brings people to these areas. So this isn't far off the beaten path. It is off the beaten path, but people from out of Colombia come to this area on a regular basis. So that's another reason why ProAves wants to be involved with this, because the more people are aware of these areas, you can't save things unless people aren't aware of them.
Absolutely.
And the other thing that's really interesting is the children there a year ago had a special parade where they made costumes, including cerulean warbler, which is this is the most threatened of the neotropical birds right now. The population dropped from 1.3 million to 400,000 birds. Wow. So this is a race against time here, and also getting the coal companies working with us to reforest the land, which will benefit what they need. So just instead of planting trees, we're going to have a management plan, and that will help stabilize the population. That's our intent.
Right.
So we're working on both ends of the spectrum, and this is our logos bird, the cerulean warbler. You can see on the bag of coffee the cerulean conservation mix. It's like a cobalt blue, or what would you call that?
I would. Very similar to that of our American blue jay in color, with the black, the gray, the white, and the blue.
So that'll be one of the birds we'll put out front. And Sam already, it's a very challenging bird to film because it's up in the canopy and there are not a lot of them. But he was successful in getting some footage in Michigan.
In southern Michigan, a researcher, it was, if people haven't seen birds being called down by professionals and researchers who know what they're doing, it's almost like it's magic.
Really?
This is a bird that, for another project I had tried to film, and these are birds that are typically far up in the treetops. You hear them. But I found, hooked up with a researcher who had worked in southern Michigan for quite a long time censusing these birds, and I was not expecting a whole lot, and we went to this first site. He just sets up this little, they call it a mist net. It's really fine, and I guess it's hard for the birds to see.
Right.
Well, he also had he was focusing on a small stuffed cerulean warbler model that was in the net.
Right.
He put a digital MP3 player attached to a speaker that was playing a bird call. We walked, 30 feet away, and before we had stopped walking, a male bird defending its territory against the intruding MP3 player had flown into the to the net.
Amazing, huh? Wow.
Can you explain just briefly, Marshall, what exactly a neotropical migrant is? I know before I came to birds, I can kind of guess what that means, but I don't know if that's commonly known, what that refers to.
No, you're right. Well, these are birds that travel among the Americas. So we're talking about ones that go from North America, Caribbean, Central, and South America, Mexico. That's the area that we're focused on here. And Rich knows, because I've mentioned before, my farm is called Bobolink Meadows because the bobolinks, I do the delayed mowing on hay, so that the young don't get chopped up in the equipment before August 1st, which is about when they're ready, and they've been able to feed up. And then they head as far south.
You post those signs all over your farm?
Oh yeah, I do. Yeah,
really?
It's called Farm and Nature Preserve, Bobolink Meadows Farm and Nature Preserve, because I'm doing two things. It's land use to keep the land open so Vermont stays the way it is.
Sure.
And then I do forestry and hay is the two products. But I manage the whole thing for wildlife, and then I do these two things as a component of managing it for wildlife. That's the whole idea behind it. So when they leave here, they leave with their kids, and there are many more of them because of the way we're managing it. And they can fly as far south as northern Argentina. It's quite a haul. So they need to have these areas along the way too, where they can feed and fuel up again.
Once again, here, a wealth of information. Thank you so much for coming on WBTN today. And I'd also like to thank you, Sam, for coming here today and having the opportunity to videotape this. Good luck on your project, and please let us know how it all turns out.
Oh, thank you very much, and I'm sure you'll be hearing from Marshall
That's great.
about how this goes.
Well, good luck, and thanks so much, and we'll see you next month.
Okay, thanks, Rich.
All right, Marshall Case right there, and Sam Orr. And ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to 1370 AM WBTN. Your news is up in 5 seconds. Stay right where you are, then it's Tag Sale Thursday.
From Powell Mill to Cambridge, Hoosick Falls to Arlington, we cover it all. AM 1370 WBTN, Bennington.
El hombre malo. Cuando quieras, ya. Luces, cámara, acción.
That's what kind of bird it is.
A ver, necesito que todos me respondan cómo es el nombre de ese ave.
¡Feliz el azul! ¡Listo! ¡Ahora, azul!
Bueno, cada uno me va a decir el nombre
El perico.
¿Cómo es el perico?
¡Qué bien!
Y lo que nos han dicho nuestros compañeros, cae la nieve, se caen las hojas, no hay flores. ¿Dónde queda Estados Unidos? La cosa más difícil. Más difícil, más difícil. ¿Cuáles son las aves boreales?
Roller coaster.
Keep crunching. This is the last step to take it to sell it. Okay?
No.
stuff that people really like.
It was oil all through here, and there was nobody out here cleaning it up. And it could have been a lot worse, no doubt, even, you know, had we had more oil or whatever. But, you know, with what we had that came ashore, I just think that there should have been much better coordinated efforts to take care of that stuff, to prevent it from coming ashore. There was ample time.
As the oil moved in, this otter got slammed at least 5 times with oil. And every time an oil layer came, here came some new vegetation, some wash, you know, some rack from storms and stuff, and covered it up. So as you keep going down, as you can see, you still got oil layers lower and lower and lower. But if we let them dig it all the way and keep pulling this stuff out, we ain't gonna have no more island left. It's all gonna wash away.
On a wildlife management area, which, you know, affords protection. It's owned by the state of Louisiana, by the Department of Wildlife and Fisheries, owned and managed. And then adjacent, we have a federal refuge managed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. About 200,000 acres of protection. So we have a physical presence here in terms of personnel, which affords a lot of the wildlife that utilize this area, you know, a great deal more protection they would get, say, on private land or something, you know, of that nature, where, you know, areas that are not manned or protected or managed. Where does that keep coming from, Clint? Jeez.
It's layers. We have layers.
This is where they picked a lot of stuff
Yeah,
up.
they dug all this up.
You get kind of complacent, you know, you forget about it, out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. And when if I don't come out for a month and kind of, you put it on the back burner, or you think, well, it's being cleaned up and it's a lot better, and then you come out here and see it's not a whole lot different. You get another, 20 degrees up into the mid-90s or close to 100 out here during the middle of the summer, and you're going to have oil oozing probably out of this substrate. Yeah. But lots of secretive marsh birds like rails and other birds utilize this habitat. If you get it re-exposed into the system, then that can trail down to a beach where you have a lot of shorebirds or terns or other water birds, waders and such. Anything's worth doing, whether or not they're making a big impact, it's hard to tell. It's going to be difficult to assess. But I mean, Clinton and them know, and they stay out here. We have crews that stay out here and monitor it. And, I mean, they're doing anything they do is something positive for the most part. I mean, if we're involved in it to make sure they're not doing more damage than good.
What the guys back there were doing were they dig test holes. And they're looking for tar patties. And when they find the tar patty, they scrape off the top layers of clean sand, and then they scoop out the contaminated sands. And the contaminated sand, obviously, they bag it up, and then they put the clean sands back on top to try and fill the hole back up. Because we have an erosion problem, and we want to keep as much of our sand as we can here. That's where we have Wilson's plover nesting. and we want to keep the activity to a minimum around those areas because they don't like disturbance. They're trying to raise their nests there, and we like to keep people away from it as much as possible.
The oil itself has come on the island, and also just the boom that was placed on there has probably done some damage to the island too, you think? Yeah. A lot of this island that used to be solid mangrove with good vegetation top to bottom. Now you've got a lot of this bottom that's opened up areas, so a lot of these birds are down nesting there on the ground. So it's not going to take much of an elevation of water, just a small storm, to take out those ground nesting birds.
But and Marty mentioned the boom. I mean, boom was an issue because it's such a high energy environment, as you can tell just from being out here with this wave action. They couldn't anchor boom very well. A lot of that boom got washed off onto the island and broke the mangroves. And this whole end of this north end of this island is much different last year. A lot of healthy mangroves now, and like Marty mentioned, many of these birds are now nesting essentially on the ground, and that's not good for any kind of, even a tropical system with a high tide of say 2 or 3 feet is going to jeopardize many of these nests.
Flooded the marshes and on the edges, and it killed a lot of pulse larvae that came in March and April. And when the season did open, everything was closed. You couldn't make $1 anyway. So, and it's still killing. It's got to kill them. It had so much in there because they go into the marshes, and that's when they go to stay away from predators, and they grow. Then after they grow, they come back out into the Gulf. We're not seeing that here in Barataria Bay this year. What's going to happen in the years to come? The oil did the damage, and it's still doing damage. And we just have to wait. And nobody really knows what's going to happen, but I know it.
The general public is they're tired of it. They don't want to hear about it anymore. There was not a big cry when this was all shown 2 weeks ago for the anniversary. There wasn't a big public outcry like, wow, look, there is still all this going on. Well, that's human nature. You get tired of the negative stuff, I guess, but it's real, and it still needs to be, not like it was last year by any means, but there are cases, like here today, that places like this that still need to be addressed.
Coffee has been traditionally grown in the shade of mature trees and forests, which provide shelter for much of the wildlife found in the tropics. But today, these forests are increasingly cut down to make way for sun-grown coffee plantations, and as a result, the wildlife largely disappears. By asking that your coffee be shade-grown, you can help ensure the survival and regrowth of tropical trees and forests. And along with them, the wildlife that has nowhere else to go.
Ellos viajan miles de millas, cruzan océanos a lo largo del camino y mientras emigran, las aves unen nuestro mundo. En el verano, ellos convierten nuestros patios traseros y nuestros bosques en sus hogares. En otras temporadas, deben viajar hacia el sur, a rincones tropicales y subtropicales del mundo, donde van en búsqueda de calor y alimento durante los fríos meses invernales. Bosques tropicales cuentan con la mayor diversidad de vida del mundo. Sin embargo, estas mismas áreas también producen una de las materias más valiosas sobre la Tierra: café. Tradicionalmente cultivado en sombra de árboles ancianos y de bosques, el café viaja dentro y fuera de los trópicos y por todo el mundo. La gente bebe casi 1.000 millones de tazas de café cada día. Pero durante los últimos 30 años, más de la mitad de las granjas que cultivan café han eliminado sus bosques y sus preciosos árboles de sombra, de los cuales la fauna tropical depende. Las granjas que producen café cultivado bajo el sol son relativamente estériles y pueden mantener solo el 10% de su antigua diversidad. Esta tierra no es hospitalaria para la mayoría de las criaturas que llaman selvas tropicales su hogar. Su café diario tiene un fuerte impacto a miles de millas de donde usted lo disfruta. Pero lo que beba, y como usted lo pida, puede ser la clave para una solución. En las colinas de las montañas Andes, en el norte de Colombia, la precipitación es alta y el clima caliente, creando condiciones perfectas para cultivar el café. A causa del terreno escarpado, la mayor parte de las granjas en esta región de pequeñas ciudades son de tamaño modesto. Y por consiguiente, producción de café sigue siendo cultivada en la sombra. El café cultivado bajo el sol crece más rápido, pero también requiere fertilizantes químicos y pesticidas adicionales para producir más granos. A causa de estos gastos añadidos, muchas pequeñas granjas adicionales en América Latina han mantenido árboles de sombra y variedades de café tolerantes a la sombra. En estas granjas familiares, más que en las granjas más grandes y corporativas, la salud y el valor de la tierra es apreciado. Tanto las granjas como estos valores son heredados a nuevas generaciones. Granjas de café de sombra pueden contener docenas de especies de árboles tropicales nativos, que a su turno reciben una diversidad aumentada de otras plantas y animales. Una vez escogidos, los granos son separados mecánicamente de sus pieles rojas. En las granjas más grandes, esto es hecho con equipos automatizados, pero las más pequeñas a menudo hacen las cosas a la antigua. Los paneles de techo correcidos son retirados para abrir plataformas, donde los granos sin cáscara son expuestos para secarse bajo el sol. Los granos cultivados bajo sombra maduran más lentamente que las variedades cultivadas bajo el sol, lo cual aumenta su contenido de azúcar y enriquece su sabor. Independientemente de si son cultivados por una granja grande o pequeña, el café de sombra ayuda a mantener un paisaje que incluye árboles. El 97% del café producido hoy en día viene de plantaciones de sol. Además, las temperaturas más altas asociadas con el cambio climático tienen el potencial para afectar variedades de café cultivadas bajo el sol más que sus colegas protegidos por la sombra. Entre más calor haga, más pequeña será la cosecha de café cultivada bajo el sol. pero protegido por la sombra de árboles, el café no solo prospera sin productos químicos y pesticidas, pero esto también ayuda a proporcionar un hábitat para 2/3 de las aves encontradas en las selvas tropicales intactas. Otras ventajas ambientales, como el flujo de agua limpia y persistente, acompañan la presencia de árboles también. Los grupos de conservación, como ProAves en Colombia, protegen el hábitat crítico en las regiones que cultivan café.
La Fundación ProAves está haciendo un trabajo fuertemente en educación ambiental, conservación e investigación en esta zona. Son zonas prioritarias, ya que han sido muy intervenidas por cultivos como el café, el cacao, ganadería. Entonces estamos tratando de conservar, de ayudar a que la naturaleza se recupere para que las especies tengan un futuro mejor. Estamos haciendo trabajos importantes como unir 2 reservas naturales en esta zona, que es la Reinita Cielo Azul y Pauxi Pauxi, por medio de un corredor biológico, haciendo reforestación de plantas nativas producidas en nuestros viveros.
ProAves hace que estas áreas naturales sean abiertas y accesibles a otros, para ayudar a aumentar conciencia humana de los lazos entre la fauna, los bosques y la producción de café. Y quizás su público más importante son los niños de la región. A través de visitas de aulas y ejercicios colegiales, el mensaje de conservación puede ser transmitido. Un festival anual de pájaros migratorios se celebra en varios sitios a lo largo de Colombia, brindando a los alumnos la posibilidad de desfilar y ayudar a extender el mensaje a sus padres y vecinos. Uno de los mensajes más importantes es cómo los bosques locales y granjas impactan a las aves que emigran desde miles de millas. Y al igual, como un forestal a miles de millas de Colombia puede afectar las aves que ellos ven volando fuera de su ventana. Aves migratorias unen las partes más distantes del mundo. La pérdida de solamente una parte de esta cadena migratoria amenazará a la supervivencia de cualquier especie única de pájaros. Muchas de las aves que pasan el invierno en América Latina vuelven a las montañas Apalaches en los Estados Unidos durante la primavera para reproducirse y para criar a sus retoños. Pero durante las últimas décadas, montañas enteras han desaparecido en este área y con ellas sus bosques, mientras minas superficiales de carbón desnudan el paisaje. Pero así como los bosques tropicales de América Latina, los bosques de Apalache tienen grupos que procuran reparar los daños y perjuicios del pasado. Estos grupos tratan de restaurar bosques sobre minas superficiales, no solo con la intención de sembrar árboles sobre estos sitios drásticamente desequilibrados, pero también para restaurar tanto la forma como la función natural de los bosques, tal como eran antes de minería a cielo abierto. No podemos restaurar la madre naturaleza a su antiguo estado, pero sin embargo, sí podemos intentarlo de esta manera y esperar que sea suficiente.
Hola, mi nombre es Elsie Joana, tengo 17 años.
Las aves y el café, como una carta, conectan las partes distantes del mundo. La manera en la cual el café es cultivado en América Latina podría ser el factor decisivo de un pájaro migratorio queriendo volver al norte para anidar cada primavera. Y como el carbón es extraído en los Estados Unidos, esto podría afectar cuáles aves conocerán los niños en Colombia. El café es una de las piezas más fáciles de detectar en este rompecabezas.
Ver las maravillas que tenemos.
Sabiendo de dónde viene su café, exigiendo que el suyo sea cultivado en la sombra de árboles maduros y bañado en nieblas tropicales, usted puede ayudar a asegurar que estas aves siempre tendrán un hogar.
They travel thousands of miles, even crossing oceans along the way. And as they migrate, birds connect our world. In the summer, they call our backyards and our forests their home. But at other times of the year, they must fly south, to tropical and subtropical parts of the world where they can find warmth and food during the cold winter months. Tropical forests support some of the greatest diversity of life on Earth. But these same areas also produce one of the most valuable commodities on Earth: coffee. Traditionally grown in the shade of mature trees and forests, coffee travels in and out of the tropics and all over the world. People drink nearly 1 billion cups of it every day. But in the last 30 years, over half of farms that grow coffee have eliminated the forests and shade trees that tropical wildlife depend upon. The resulting sun-grown coffee farms are relatively barren and can support only 10% of their former diversity. This land is no longer hospitable to the majority of creatures that call tropical rainforests home. Your daily coffee has an impact thousands of miles away. But what you drink and how you ask for it can be the key to a solution. In the foothills of the Andes Mountains in northern Colombia, the rainfall is high and the climate is warm, which create perfect conditions for growing coffee. Because of steep terrain, most farming done in this region of small towns are of modest size. And as a result, shade-grown coffee production continues. Sun-grown coffee grows faster, but also requires chemical fertilizers and other agents to produce more beans. Because of these added expenses, many smaller farms in Latin America have kept shade trees and shade-tolerant coffee varieties. On these family-owned farms, more so than the larger corporate ones, the health and value of the land is appreciated as it is passed on to new generations. Shade coffee farms may contain dozens of native tropical tree species, which in turn host an increased diversity of other plants and animals. Once picked, the beans are mechanically separated from their red skins. On larger farms, this is done with motorized equipment, but the smaller farms still do it the old-fashioned way. Sliding roof panels are pulled back to open drying platforms, where the husked beans are spread out to dry in the sun. Shade-grown beans mature at a slower rate than the sun-grown varieties, which increase their sugar content as well as their flavor. Regardless of whether it's grown on a large or small farm, shade coffee helps maintain a landscape that includes trees. 97% of the coffee produced today comes from sun plantations. Bare soil is often exposed in these plots, increasing erosion and the loss of nutrients. And higher temperatures associated with climate change appear to impact sun coffee varieties more so than their shade-protected counterparts. The hotter it gets, the smaller the sun-grown coffee crop is likely to be. But in the protected shade of trees, coffee not only thrives without pesticides and fertilizers, it helps provide habitat for 2/3 of the birds, for example, found in untouched tropical rainforests. Other benefits, such as clean and persistent water flow, come along with the trees as well. Conservation groups, such as Pro Aves in Colombia, protect critical habitat in coffee-growing regions. In addition, they have purchased a plantation with plans to use it to promote shade-grown coffee techniques to area farmers. They have also established a native tree nursery which is used to help reforest wildlife corridors and ultimately sun-grown coffee plantations. Pro Aves makes these natural areas open and accessible to others to help raise awareness of the ties between wildlife, forests, and coffee production. And perhaps their most important audience are the region's children. Through classroom visits and exercises, the message of conservation is passed on. A yearly migratory bird festival is held in several locations throughout Colombia, giving local school children a chance to parade and help spread the word to their parents and neighbors. One of the most important messages is how their local forests and farms impact birds that migrate from thousands of miles away. And in turn, how a forest thousands of miles away from Colombia can affect the birds they see outside their window. Migratory birds connect distant parts of the world. The loss of just one part of this migratory chain will threaten the survival of any single species of bird. Many of the birds that winter in Latin America return to the Appalachian Mountains of the United States in spring to mate and raise their young. But over the past several decades, whole mountains have disappeared in this area, and along with them, their forests, as surface coal mines strip the landscape bare. But also, as in the tropical forests of the South, the forests of Appalachia have groups seeking to repair the damages of the past.
The Appalachian Regional Reforestation is trying to restore forests on surface mines, not only to plant trees on these drastically disturbed sites, but also to restore both the function and the form of the forest that existed prior to mining. No one can ever try to even attempt to restore Mother Nature the way she was prior to mining, but we can do the very best we can, and that's what the Appalachian Regional Reforestation is about.
Hola, mi nombre es Elsie Joana, tengo 17 años, estudio en el Colegio Integrado Camilo Torres.
Birds and coffee, like a letter, connect distant parts of the world. How coffee is grown in Latin America might ultimately affect whether a migratory bird returns to nest around your home every spring. And how coal is mined in Kentucky or West Virginia might impact what birds school children in Colombia are familiar with.
Cada mañana levantarme,
Coffee is one of the most easily seen parts of this puzzle.
ver las maravillas,
By knowing where your coffee comes from, by asking that yours be grown in the shade of old trees, bathed in tropical mists, you can help ensure that these birds will always have a home.